Hello, crypto boys and ghouls, and welcome back to the channel, Tales from the Cryptmancer, where we feature content on play and earn games on the blockchain, such as Splinterlands. And in today's video, I wanted to walk through in real time calculating initial land return on investment. And this is an interesting topic, I think. I think it'll be interesting for a lot of people to see. The interesting part with Land 1.5 ROI is, well, it's kind of difficult to calculate in terms of, really what is the value of land? Because we're just in the very beginnings of land in Splinterlands. So, research tokens obviously are one of the three things that can be harvested, and they don't have a intrinsic value currently. So they can't really calculate ROI on research tokens. Now, grain, we don't have a full grain market embedded or working in the game. That's going to be coming with Land 1.6 essentially. But what I did is I did take a look on the peer-to-peer markets before hopping into this video creation. And roughly right now what we're seeing is that grain is selling on the peer-to-peer market anywhere from 0.06 to 0.08 range. And that's in DEC. Now that's a very, very steep discount considering that you can buy grain on the market that's in game for 1 DEC for 1 piece of grain. So that's already right there like a 92 to 94% discount on grain prices, which is for the first couple days of land being released. That's kind of crazy. Does DEC pricing go lower for grain? I don't know, but that seems like some crazy low prices for grain just off the cuff there. So right now, generally speaking, if you're looking to sell grain, well, it's probably not necessarily going to be that productive, and we can look into that a little bit later, maybe in a subsequent video, which leaves really basically the one piece left to look at for profitability for return on investment with land, and that's SPS mining. I'm going to walk through a couple examples here with you to give you my perspective on SPS mining, and then we're going to actually go into real calculations of SPS return on investment as it pertains to land. So if that seems interesting to you and it's something that you would like to understand better and find out really is land profitable or not, well, this is the video for you. So let's get into it. Let's take a look here. This is an actual screenshot of one of my tracts of land from earlier today. I have 2 tracts of land, and for a point of reference, prior to Land 1.5 being released, my tract of land each was earning about 1.4 SPS per tract of land. So, 100 plots in a tract, basically it was generating around 140 SPS per day passively, just doing nothing. No stake DEC requirements, no card requirements, just sitting there in my account, just surveyed basically. So what we can see here now is that this is Saturday evening, so it's been I don't know, a few days since land was released on Tuesday afternoon in the US. So we can see here that the SPS I'm generating in this particular tract is 23.829 SPS per hour. So if we can do this calculation pretty quickly here, I can pull up a calculator. On this calculator, again, we had 100 plots. We had 1.4 SPS per plot. That's 140 SPS per day. We had 2 tracts of land. So we were generating passively 280 SPS per day. And now with Land 1.5 released, let's take a look at what we're doing here. In this particular tract, we're getting 23.829 SPS per hour times 24 hours. That means it's 571.896 SPS per day from this tract. But we have a second tract as well, which I'm going to pull up here. The data for that tract is generating a little bit less here. You can say this second tract is generating 9.762 per hour. So let's go ahead and calculate that. 9.762 SPS per hour times 24 hours in a day. That's 474.288 SPS. We're going to add the previous track's SPS of 571.896. And you can see now I'm generating 1,046.184 SPS per day. Now, if we compare that to what I was generating passively before, you can see here it's about, I don't know, 4x more SPS per day. Let's go ahead and do the subtraction here. 280 SPS per day minus 1,046.184. Well, it's about 766 extra SPS passively per day that I am earning. But here's the key. Yes, I am earning more SPS per day with this land launch. And if we just, I guess, do some quick math here, let's say 1,046.184 SPS per day. Let's times it by, I'm not sure what SPS pricing is right now. Let's take a look. This is high price. Let's take a look at SPS pricing. Today, already at 2.65 cents, which is great. So let's go back here. So this is how much SPS we're generating per day, 1,046 times 0.0265. It's nice to see SPS on the rise. So it's basically generating 27.72 cents per day. So $27, almost $28 a day in SPS across those two tracks. Now, if we times that across a monthly period, currently right now, that's $831 roughly passively in SPS earnings at the current SPS price, which is good for sure. A couple of things to note here. The way I'm currently generating SPS is I have 100% of my production points on my two tracks mining SPS currently. Because honestly, if we look at this data right here, this tract of land, when land was first launched, was generating over 27 SPS per hour. It's already dipped below 24 SPS per hour, which is pretty significant, seeing it's only been a few days since land has launched. And as more land comes online, as more plots get cleared, more than likely this SPS per hour will continue to decline. So I'm trying to take advantage of the higher SPS earning rates now initially, and then I will switch into a more, let's say, SPS neutral or carbon neutral stance, where I'm basically generating the grain to pay for the SPS mining in a balanced fashion. It's actually going to bring my SPS mining efforts down by approximately 50%. It's a little bit less than that, but let's just say 50%. But I might be expecting to earn in a monthly basis passively from land on two tracks at $831 with a current price of SPS. Realistically, over the long term, that's going to be basically halved and will probably decrease because the SPS rate will also decrease. But in either case, $415 in passive income per month from land on two tracks is not too shabby, right? It's definitely respectable. It's certainly more than the 280 SPS per day I was getting previously. Now, what's really interesting here is land was just released a few days ago, right? We've already seen a good impact on SPS pricing as the flywheel is looking to perhaps engage. We've got the Rebellion General Sale just a couple days away. That could do some crazy things to SPS prices. Right now, this calculation of $415 passive income, just waking up every day and not doing anything, just basically collecting this is a nice little benefit, right, to playing Splinterlands. But here's where it gets interesting. Let's just say that SPS continues to do well. The flywheel kicks in, crypto gets into more of a bull market phase. Is it unheard of that SPS could reach 26 cents, right? A 10x from where it is today? I don't think so. I think that's something that could certainly be plausible or feasible. What's interesting now from a land perspective, if we're looking at ROI, well, $415 a month, ROI, when you look at all the stake DEC requirements and the card requirements and the land investment itself and the tracks and the plots, I mean, it's not a great ROI necessarily. We can go in and calculate all that maybe on a separate video. But here's where it gets interesting, because this is the current passive income estimation with SPS at, 2.6 cents, roughly, 2.65 cents. If SPS could get to 26.5 cents, again, let's just imagine what that looks like. That's a 10x in SPS price. Now, if we take this passive income per month, all of a sudden that $415 in passive income becomes $4,158 in passive income every month. And that is impressive. And this is why I think for long-term, well, I will say speculators, because crypto is very speculative, right? If you think there is a future potentially in Splinterlands long term and land and the SPS token, well, I mean, this is interesting because right now there's a lot of people selling land for cheap, wanting to get out because they're not super impressed with the returns, which we'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like, short-term returns. But here's why I say it's interesting is because, 2 tracks generating over $4,000 US potentially in passive income, just by, sleeping, waking up and doing nothing every day. Over the course of a year, I mean, that's, I don't know, almost $50,000 US. Again, and even if you divide it by 12, for those that live in the United States, you understand that even after taxes here, let's say you have $3,000 left after taxes, that still could maybe pay a mortgage payment, could certainly pay for a nice car payment passively. So this is where the value of Splinterlands, I think, exists for land potentially. Again, highly speculative, but something to consider. Now, all that being said, right, let's go back to the real math, the real numbers, not speculating on SPS pricing. But let's look at some interesting data here, and I want to show you this. This is a snapshot of one of my tracks here. You can see here, this was taken earlier this morning, so the SPS per hour was already a little bit higher. It was over 24 cents. You saw in the last snapshot, it was already below 24 cents just in the last couple hours. So it continues to go down, but here's the thing. If we look at the current price of or the current SPS emissions here. We're going to do some quick math on the calculator here. Right now, let's look at grain. Let's look at our costs first, right? Let's go pull up a calculator. Let's look at our costs here. You can see here in this particular example, my grain cost for my workers for this current harvest is 149,908.247 grain in this period of time. Now, if we said before that I could get on the secondary market right now, grain at 0.06 DEC, so that means this would be the equivalent of 8,994 DEC if I'm buying grain on the secondary market, because there's not a grain market, remember, yet in the game. And if DEC is at peg at 0.001 cents, what it tells me is for me to harvest this SPS, right, is costing me $8.99. I'm going to put this off to the side here. We're going to pull up another calculator here. All right, the secondary calculator. What we're seeing on the secondary calculator here, in this period, right, I've got 562.203 SPS that I'm able to harvest currently based on that this current grain amount of 149,908, which is the equivalent of $8.99. So this is the SPS I could harvest. Again, we saw SPS price was 0.0265. So if I were to harvest this grain, right, if I were to pay the DEC to buy the grain, continue this harvest, get the SPS and convert that SPS back into DEC from a dollar perspective, you can see here that I can convert currently that SPS into roughly $14.89. So if I, as a pure land person, was able to buy grain on the peer-to-peer market at 0.06 DEC per grain, you can see here that my profit here, if I subtract 4.898 from 8.99449482, is roughly $5.90 if on this particular harvest. And if I look at that as a percentage of the actual cost of the grain to feed these workers, you can see here that basically my profit margin basically is, if we times this by 1000, is 65.63%. Now that's based on me getting grain at 0.06 DEC on the peer-to-peer market, which we already talked about. I mentioned is, obviously very discounted to the actual grain cost provided by the game of 1 DEC. So again, in this particular case, we're seeing, based on peer-to-peer markets, a 65% margin on SPS mining currently, based on the SPS emissions, based on the peer-to-peer grain cost. Now, let's just really quickly do this math based on the actual cost of 1 grain equals 1 DEC. And I'll show you the difference here and why the grain market is going to be so important to understanding, how profitable, right, grain and SPS mining will be, at least in Land 1.5. So here we go, 149,908.247 is the amount of grain we need to make this harvest again. If it's 1 grain per 1 DEC, and DEC is that peg, you can see here, that's costing me $149.90, right, at DEC, or excuse me, at grain at the 1 DEC price point. Again, if we look at, did this math again with SPS at its current price of 0.0265 cents, we'd only be making, we'd be spending $149 in grain costs to only get $14.89 in SPS. And this is where it's exciting, I think, from a market and a DeFi perspective, gamified DeFi for land here for Splinterlands, is once the grain market comes online in 1.6, there's going to be a balance here of people buying grain, mining SPS, at least in 1.5, right? So we're already seeing some arbitrage opportunities on the peer-to-peer market here happening, where people are maybe farming grain and maybe have excess grain and want to get rid of it, and there's competition there. And you have other people that are just farming SPS and need the grain because they're not harvesting or making their own grain. So there's a balance. There's like a push and a pull to get, right, where's the profitability of SPS? What's the SPS price? Like if SPS price drops, then obviously the price of grain in the market will also drop because it'll need to get less expensive to be able to be in demand to, make grain farming or harvesting profitable or worthwhile. So it's very interesting. Again, this is where Splinterlands, I think, is really leading the Web3 space when it comes to DeFi and land and markets, right? I think it's going to be very interesting to see once the grain market comes on in place, how that arbitrage happens in real time and what it looks like. Where does SPS price settle? Where's the emission rate settle? It's going to be very interesting. For those very savvy and with numbers and on top of this, there's definitely arbitrage opportunities to happen here where you can be profitable. I'm sure at some point Xbot or other services like Peak Monsters will probably have some kind of automation or tooling here for landowners to be able to min-max kind of their harvesting and their grain purchases and all this stuff. And this is just with Land 1.5, right? With only 3 resources: research, SPS, and grain. This is only going to be much more complicated and complex once Matt's 50 plus resources come into the game here with Land 2.0. So very, very interesting stuff. I want to also share one other quick math exercise with you. Again, just to validate this number, so that you can see that this is not, created out of thin air, and the math does make sense. We're going to go here. I've actually got a quick spreadsheet here that I just created some columns for. We're going to do this in real time. I haven't done this calculation yet myself, so we're going to find out together what this looks like. What we're going to do is we're going to look at this from a new player perspective, right? If I'm a brand new player to Splinterlands, I just came to the game and I'm like, oh, land's released. What does this mean for me? Can I buy a plot of land? Can I be profitable? I don't know. Let's find out. We're going to find out here together. Let's look at this cost. A common land plot. Like if I'm going to go on the market right now and buy a plot of land, I can see here Crypto Eaters selling one, $29.99. This plot in Shadow Vale could be yours. No building in a box, no power core, no time crystals, none of that stuff. So 29.99 US, and it's all ours. All right, let's just say we bought it. That's the cost of our plot of land. It's a common natural. Time crystals or grain to clear here. Common natural plot, I'll save you the time. It's 150 time crystals to clear. Let's just say we want to instantly clear it, even though it may be cheaper to just buy the grain at the current grain costs and wait the period of time to clear it. Let's just say we're going to buy 150 time crystals, and 150 time crystals you can buy right now for let's say 70 DEC per time crystal on the peer-to-peer market, and then we're going to take that DEC and equivalent. Let's just make that equal to US dollars. How about that? So the time crystal cost is 10.5 US dollars to clear the plot of land. The power core is 5,000 DEC. Again, we're going to put 5,000 DEC and sell that DEC at peg. So that's $5 for a power core. 5 maxed CL rare cards for workers for this land. Where am I getting this from? Well, it's not probably optimal, to be honest with you, to max Chaos Legion reward cards on this plot of land because, well, the state DEC cost is going to be, for max cards, it's going to be 50,000 DEC. 50,000 DEC at peg is, well, $50 basically to put those cards on the land, which is more than the land cost and the clearing cost and the power core cost. But the reason why we're doing this is because it gives us a baseline of production point power that's actually going to actually produce something of substance, right? Like it's not going to produce like 0.1 grain per hour or something. It's actually going to produce a reasonable amount of grain, nothing fancy, but better than nothing. So if we go here again to peak monsters, I look here, I'm in the buy card filter under compare. I'm looking at it from a best PP for cost ratio. I can see rare card giving the best PP for cost ratio. It's down to 319 for a neutral. Obviously before land, well not obviously, but just for reference, before land went live, this you could still get stuff for over 400 PP for cost ratios. So card prices are already being affected by land being released. And you can see here, like a Wavesmith here, I'm only going to get 295.222 PP for $1. So card prices are on the rise here with land. If you look at your card value or card collection value, if you're a Splinterlands player, you're probably happy to see that moving in an upward direction, which is great. Let's go here. Venari Wavesmith looks like to be possibly our best buy here on the market. Let's go ahead and take a look. Let's go to grid view. Let's go to rares. You can see here, Venari Wavesmith. I can get one here, a full max copy for $4.48. So let's just use that. Let's just say we have a lake or a river. We get 10% bonus here on our common plot. So I said it was $4.48. There's going to be 5 of those that we're going to need, 5 workers. $22.40 for our land workers. Let me just make sure I got that price right. $4.48. Yeah, $4.48. We're good. All right, so now if we do the cost here, the cost of this land plot to get online, one plot of land, $117.80. We could do this today. We could do this right now if we had $117.80. Perfect. Now you're probably asking, well, Tails, okay, that's a cost, but how do we know what kind of production we can get from that land. Well, the good news is I have a plot of land I can show you here. This is one particular plot. It's a common natural here. Go to manage. You can see I've got a power core. I've got 4 Chaos Legion max reward cards. In this particular case, they're Crystal Smiths and a Volguin. And what is it telling us? It's telling us it's generating 0.161 SPS an hour currently on this kind of configuration on land. So let's go ahead and calculate here. SPS per hour, 0.161. SPS per day is going to be that number times 24, because there's 24 hours in a day. That's how math works. So the SPS per day that we would be generating is 3.864 SPS on this common natural plot. The price of SPS, 0.0265. Currently means that we're generating off this common natural plot of land 10.23 cents per day. Okay, so that's kind of our income right now, but we have to look at our costs. Now, our cost per day is dictated by our worker cost. Again, we only bought one plot. We don't have any other plots generating grain for us to feed this particular plot and to make it sustainable. So we're gonna have to buy grain off the market. Again, the cost of grain right now is equal to 0.06 DEC per piece of grain. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's put this here. So that's our cost of grain in DEC. Again, we should probably do it correctly, make it in US dollars, times 0.001. So basically that's the cost of grain for a single piece of grain. It's 0.06 DEC and DEC is at 0.001. Now the question is, well, Tails, how do we know how much grain this plot of land is going to consume from a working standpoint? Well, the good news is we can figure that out. As you can see here on this particular data here, a rare Chaos Legion reward card with bonuses is going to be 1,210 production points. You can see here it's broken down. It's got a base production of 1,100. So open up the handy dandy white paper for Splinterlands. You can see here workers will consume grain at a rate of 0.01 grain per base production point provided per hour. You can see here gives an example of a common Chaos Legion reward at 1,000 PP per hour. It does not include production boosts such as land rarity, totems, titles, etc. So let's go ahead and do the math here. If we do 1,100 base production points per rare Chaos Legion card on this plot of land, we have 5 of them. That's 5,500 base production points an hour times 0.01 as their food cost. That means it's 55 grain per hour this plot of land is consuming. Per day, 1,320. Let's go ahead and plug that in to the data here. 1,320 grain required per day. You can see here the cost of grain. The total worker food cost per day is going to be the amount of grain required times the cost of the grain, and you can see here it's going to be 7.92 cents in grain costs. What does that mean? Our profit loss per day on this common natural plot of land passively with these cards is going to be 0.023 cents. So basically 2 cents roughly per day in profit. Now, is that anything to get super excited about? Probably not, right? If you see all of this above, this $117 in total costs, you're going to generate 2 cents a day. Is that something to be excited about, putting $117 in there? Again, if you take that amount of profit per day and you times it by 365 days in a year, basically you would make $8.46 in a year on that common plot, and you would have paid $117. And from, I guess, that perspective, it looks like a pretty bad deal, right? It's like, well, why would I pay $117 to get $8 a year? That seems like a very terrible investment or investment type strategy. And you have to look at it a little bit more closely because, again, stake DEC, assuming you believe DEC will stay near peg, that $50 is not burnt. It's not lost. It's not a cost. It's still 50 $50 in DEC that you essentially still own and have control over. You just have it basically locked up on your land so your land can produce that 2 cents a day. So in theory, your cost basis for your ROI calculations could be argued that you would not have that $50 in stake DEC as a cost. You could also say that the $22.40 you pay in those card costs today, well, you might say that those cards should be worth that or more in the future, especially if there's card burning events and other things happening. So, I mean, that's debatable. Again, many people don't believe cards to be assets that'll appreciate or even hold their value. So you could say, well, we'll just keep that card cost there. Let's say with depreciation, we say maybe it's $10 of cost. Maybe you think you can get $12.40 back in the future, right? So our true cost here might be 10, right? Power cores, we're never getting back. That's tied to the land. Time crystals, we're never getting back. That's part of the cost of bringing up the land. And here's another one that's up for debate. The common plot of land that you paid $29.90 today. Does it go up in value? Does it go down in value? I mean, who knows? Not me. I mean, you never know what it could do. Let's just say that, again, for depreciation purposes, you say, well, in the future, maybe I could sell it at 50% off. Maybe I can get $15 for that common plot of land if I ever wanted to exit the game and sell it. So my cost, let's just say, is $15 on land. So now, if we look at these updated costs here, we sum that all up. Our cost is $40.50, right? As a quote true cost perspective, as a cost basis, even though we put $117.80 in, because we might figure that we can get, well, you know, the rest of that out, and our true cost would be $40.50. So again, if we look at what our yearly APR would be, if we take the yearly profit here, which is D18, and we divide it by our true cost, which would be C7. You can see here, roughly your APR on that investment then is 20.9%. Is 20.9% a great APR from a land perspective? I mean, that's up to you to I guess speculate on or have an opinion on. You know, again, if you're investing kind of money in a bank right now, you might be getting, I don't know, 5%. I haven't really checked. You know, 20.9% seems better than 5%, but again, it's very speculative here in crypto. We go back to our previous example of SPS. You know, if SPS does a 10x, well, then this profit loss per day becomes much more interesting. Again, it depends on, from a speculation standpoint, what you think Splinterlands, land, and SPS will do. If we change this price, instead of being 2 cents, it's 26.5 cents, right? Look what happens. Look what happens. All of a sudden, now we're making 94 cents per day. We're making $344 a year, and we're making 851% APR on our stuff here, right? More than likely, our cost basis, our true cost is, you know, much less than this, because probably the cards are worth more, the land is worth more, you know, all that jazz. So here's the takeaway: is land super sexy and super profitable right now? At land at 2.65 cents? No, you're making a new player coming in is making 2 cents a day and is making like $8.46 a year, you know, buying a common plot of land and working it. But if a lot of people start to do that, the flywheel kicks in, SPS price continues to go up, rebellion is successful, and there's other things happening in the game and in the ecosystem and in crypto. Again, that 20.9% APR or APY as it exists today, if SPS, again, this is a big if it can do a 10x, boom, this picture is a lot more interesting. And that's why land, I think, is interesting. Again, it's not super sexy today, but if you have a bullish outlook on Splinterlands, on the SPS token, on land and what it could do, it could be interesting. It could be something to look at for sure. What I'll also say is land 1.5 is just a launch of land. The end game of land is not to mine SPS and to mine an APY. Ultimately, as Matt has talked about, land getting to 2.0 is to mine other resources, to mint your own NFTs, and be able to sell those NFTs on a market, or those resources to make NFTs on a market that leads to a completely new gamified DeFi ecosystem. And that's what's ultimately exciting, right? Land 1.5 and SPS mining is what we have today. These calculations are based on that. The future of land is much more complicated and much more complex, and could be much more interesting, could also be much more profitable. We'll have to see. In either case, I leave you with this, some interesting math, some interesting data as we look at the initial land ROI with land 1.5. There's still a lot more to come. I think it's exciting, personally. I mean, it may not be super exciting for everyone, but I think, what we're seeing here as the foundation and framework for what Splinterlands can do with land, I mean, yeah, the sky could be the limit. Let's see. Let me know what you think in the comments below. What do you think about land ROI? What do you think about land in general in Splinterlands? Are you feeling positive? Are you feeling depressed? Let me know. Until next time, keep stacking those stats.